give you a little, I'll take you out of that. In fact, that'll end up being the story. But actually, this
Donald Trump has threatened to impose tariffs on countries that do not go along with his plan to annex Greenland, increasing pressure on European allies who have opposed his effort to take over the Arctic territory. After a tense week in which NATO allies deployed troops to the largely autonomous territory, which is part of the Danish kingdom, the U.S. president announced he might punish countries that do not support his plans to take over Greenland, using force if necessary. Earlier, Trump's special envoy to Greenland said a deal for Washington to take over the island should and will be made, as a U.S. congressional delegation visited Copenhagen in a show of support for Denmark and Greenland. Jeff Landry said he planned to visit Greenland in March and that the U.S. president is serious about acquiring the Arctic island. The bipartisan group of 11 members of the House and Senate, including the Republican Senators Tom Tillis and Lisa Murkowski and the Democrat Senator Chris Coons, traveled to the capital of Denmark to meet the Danish and Greenlandic leaders Mette Frederiksen and Jens Frederik Nielsen in a show of solidarity against Trump's threats of military intervention. It is the second time this week Trump has used the threat of tariffs, saying he would impose a 25% tax on imports to the U.S. from countries that do business with Iran, amid a brutal crackdown by its regime that has left thousands dead and imprisoned tens of thousands. Trump raised the tariffs idea on Friday during a wide-ranging 45-minute, nearly uninterrupted address at a packed rural healthcare event in the White House East Room. Trump told the audience of lawmakers, doctors, and political power players he might put tariffs on countries that did not go along with Greenland because we need Greenland for national security. He pointed to threats he made against European allies over drug pricing, saying he warned France and Germany of 25% tariffs if they did not pay more for prescription drugs, and recalled telling French President Emmanuel Macron, "You have to get your drug prices up." He mused that he could take the same approach to Denmark and may do that for Greenland too. His comments came after Landry told Fox News, "I do believe that there's a deal that should and will be made once this plays out." He added, "The president is serious. I think he's laid the markers down. He's told Denmark what he's looking for, and now it's a matter of having Secretary Rubio and Vice President J.D. Vance make a deal." Denmark announced it had agreed to provide support to help Greenland's emergency preparedness. Torsten Schack Pedersen, Denmark's Minister for Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, said, "It is important that we stand together." Peter Borg, Greenland's Minister for Fisheries, Hunting, Agriculture, Self-Sufficiency and Environment, said his government appreciates the support from Denmark to strengthen preparedness in Greenland. This week, Greenlanders living in the capital, Nuuk, said they were so afraid of the threat from the U.S. that they were watching the skies and seas themselves. In the absence of emergency preparedness support from authorities, many said they had been left to work out their own plans on what to do in the case of emergency evacuation or capture by U.S. forces. During the congressional visit to Denmark, for which the Greenlandic flag, Erfalasorp, was flown at Christiansborg Palace, the U.S. lawmakers were due to meet other Danish and Greenlandic politicians, as well as Frederiksen and Nielsen. Arriving at a lunch meeting at the Confederation of Danish Industry, the Democrat Steny Hoyer told TV2, "Keep the faith. You've got a lot of people with you." At a joint press conference, Coons thanked Denmark for 225 years of being a good and trusted ally and partner, and said they had a strong and robust dialogue about how to continue their relationship into the future. "There's a lot of rhetoric, but not a lot of reality in Washington," he said, in discussions about Greenland. He added they were hoping to use information from the visit to try to lower the temperature and have a constructive dialogue at home. Murkowski said the majority of Americans did not want a U.S. takeover of Greenland, adding Greenland needs to be viewed as our ally, not as an asset. After Wednesday's closely watched high-stakes meeting between the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, and the foreign ministers of Greenland and Denmark, the two sides gave starkly contrasting accounts of what was agreed. The White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, on Thursday claimed that a delegation from Denmark and Greenland had agreed to continue to have technical talks on the acquisition of Greenland. But Lars Løkke Rasmussen and Vivian Motzfeldt Fredriksen, the foreign ministers of Denmark and Greenland respectively, contradicted her claims. Rasmussen said they had not made such an agreement, but had formed a working group to investigate whether it was possible to accommodate U.S. security wishes for the Arctic region. Motzfeldt said Leavitt had not been at the meeting, telling the Greenland newspaper Sermitsiaq, "There's a lot of work ahead, the situation is still very uncertain, but we have a new channel, a place where we can talk directly to each other." On Thursday, Fredriksen said Greenland's defense was a common concern for NATO as international troops started arriving in Greenland from across Europe. A spokesperson for the German Defense Ministry said on Friday the reconnaissance mission would assess the viability of deploying Eurofighter jets to the territory. "It is a matter of looking at whether the Arctic is secure and to what extent we can contribute